Welcome, everybody, to our first ever Fan the Flames live. So, I'm here with Danny Steele, and we're going to be sharing all about the things that fan his flame and what fans the flame as those that he works with. So my belief is that we all have a flame, we all have a spark, a little bit of something inside of us that just needs a little bit of encouragement to grow, that potential that needs a cheerleader there cheering us on, enabling us to do what it is that we want to do. And often in life we don't always get the opportunity to really fan those flames. But one of the things that Danny has done is really kind of taken on the opportunity to do the things that he really wants to do to allow his light to shine out there in the world. So I'm going to stop talking for a moment. I'm going to allow Danny to introduce himself.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you so much. It's really interesting. You use the phrase cheerleading, and it's such a great phrase, isn't it? And I'm a massive fan of the phrase creative cheerleading, because it's about bringing the backing dancers to what we do, bringing all of these backing dancers like 100% in there. And so I'm a very visual person, so I visualize these women in their rah-rah skirt. I don't know if that's the term, but I'm saying rah-rah skirt and the pom-poms, and they're going, go Danny, do this, do that. I can't dance, but I'm just saying, I'm just doing the whole thing. But it's about not just bringing the backing dancers, but also the house band, the conductor, and the audience to our own lives. And it kind of ties in with something I'm very passionate about, which is about connection, about creativity. It's about realizing that we are all the CEO of our own lives. We are not just, life doesn't just kind of happen to us. We are actively going out, and we are the marketing person, as well as the CEO, as well as the post boy, as well as all these different roles that we play at different times of our lives, of course. And it comes down to, for me, it comes down to trust. It comes down to an innate trust within ourselves.
And as you say that, you talk about this idea of trust. I think that there's something about almost sometimes we need to not quite trust ourselves to get there, but trust we're going to try.
Yes.
Trust we're going to do our best, because sometimes we get a little bit caught up in getting it perfect.
Oh, God.
I mean, absolutely right. As opposed to going, what's the most that I can do, or what's the least I can do to move something forward, and trusting that you can do that.
Yeah. And, perfectionism, I could talk for hours. I won't, but it's just... It's such a safety mechanism, and it's such a kind of like, this thing I do has to be perfect, because if I don't do it perfectly, there's no point. And it holds a lot of people back, and myself, for example, it held me back for a while about it has to be really, really good. It doesn't. It has to be good enough. And as you said, you can come at something at 60% and then make the rest up, and that's okay.
And when you talk about good enough, it's like, if we've got the backing dancers behind us in their rah-rah skirts, or in our rah-rah skirts, actually, let's go whole hog. Let's all be wearing rah-rah skirts. It kind of shows our age a little bit.
Yeah, I've got rah-rah skirts.
Yes. But when we've got that kind of energy behind us, whether we bring it or other people bring it with us, it does give us that energy to go that extra mile. So if something is only 60 or 70%, if we've got that energy behind it, we can move it up into those 80s and 90s.
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. Absolutely. And, it's just remembering, you talk about trust. It's remembering that we've got this far in our lives, and we have trusted ourselves in so many situations. And actually, sometimes when it comes to, let's just say for the sake of argument, sometimes when it comes to starting up our own business, it's daunting. It's like, oh my God, and then we stop trusting this innate sense that we've always had throughout our lives, and we default to someone else, or we give our power away.
And as you're talking there, it's like this idea of trust. It's a deeper trust. It's more than just, I trust you to show up, or I trust you not to take all my money. But there's this kind of an internal trust that we're talking about here. And I think this also speaks to this idea of that internal flame that we have, that little bit
Yes.
of potential, that
Yes.
little bit of something that we just need to nurture to enable it to come out in its fullest, richest self.
Yeah. Do you remember those science experiments at school where you had your Bunsen burner and you turned the bottom and it would go, let me get this right, it would go blue flame, but you turned it the other way and it would go like a yellow flame. And it's like that. It's like the yellow flame was the bigger flame. So actually we all have that flame, but often a lot of us throughout our lives, we've turned that right down to the blue flame that's the much smaller.
I like that. I like that because there's this, it kind of speaks to that we have this, the control mechanisms for our own flames.
Yeah.
But sometimes we need somebody else to come along and just kind of point it out to us, or just turn it a little bit with us in order for us to get the hang of it and the swing of it and go, oh, okay, that's how I turn my flame on, as it were. And
Yes.
that's how I get fired up.
Yeah, no, this is it. It's about turning your flame on. But often throughout life throws us curveballs and situations that we find ourselves in, and we think, oh my God, and our flame kind of does go down a little bit, which is totally fine. But all we need is a mirror, and we show someone else that, you know what, this is you. Look, you have perfect opportunity just to kind of turn it up a little bit. Just give it a little crank.
And we're off.
And we're
flying. And then, we just have to keep remembering that to keep moving forward. And it's interesting because when we've got our backing dancers with us and we've got our flames on, they've also bring their flames to the party. So we kind of create this big fire between us.
Yeah, and this is recognizability. Is that a word? It is now. There's a recognizability when I have my flame and my backing dancers, and then I see you, Rob, with your flame and your backing dancers, and then there's someone else, and it's like, oh yeah, and there's that kind of commonality there. Oh, you're at this place, great. I'm at this place too, fantastic. So yeah, so there's this. It's always equal. It's never unequal.
Yeah, and it's this resonance, I guess, that we're turning our flames on, or our flames are on, or we're firing up, or we're trying to get there.
Yes.
And this resonance around the intent that we're trying to create something or do something. Yes. And when we see others that have that intent, we notice it and we go, okay, you're trying to do something, let me help you. I'm trying to do, let's help.
Yeah.
And so there's something about when we get into that state of having our flames on, or fanning our flames into those beautiful fires, others can see that and can resonate with it and can be inspired by it, but can also inspire us to do even more with it.
I love that concept of inspiration as well that you just said. And in my book that I'm writing, there's a paragraph that I just put here just for this conversation about inner cheerleading is a trust in oneself. We have to move to the world of the safe and the known, to the world of the unknown. And then everything required to bring our ideas to light will become apparent as we begin to examine our initial spark, as we begin to turn our own inner Bunsen burner.
Yeah, absolutely. And it reminds me something that Darren Smallridge said, and it isn't his quote, but he was talking about this idea that, that the staircase is unknown to us, but as we take that first step, the second step becomes known, and we take the second step, the third step becomes known. And this idea that each step we take allows the pathway to present itself, but we've got to move, right? So we can we can be in the safe space, the safe internal space, but at some point we need to step out of that space. And as we do so, we can start to move, and we can retreat when we need to, because sometimes we do, but we can, look at what's going to keep us moving forward. And that movement allows the next step to emerge and the next step to emerge.
Absolutely. And, sometimes we take a tiny baby step and that's enough on this staircase. But sometimes we take a great big leap. Sometimes we jump 2 or 3 steps at once. And when we are faced with a situation that we have felt, for example, overwhelm or something in, then that big leap is so daunting to us that often we freeze. I have been a freezer in my life, like literally just like, I don't know what I'm doing, like a rabbit in headlights. That was my default mechanism for a long time. And actually, then I take it back to, okay, so can I, or am I willing to, instead of take that big leap, take a just look in the direction that I want to go, and that's enough, you know?
It's really funny. I'm laughing because I was in a conversation today where I was saying to somebody that sometimes the step we want to take is just too big.
Yeah,
And we need to look at how do we shrink it down so we
yeah,
can take a really tiny step and just allow that to move us forward, as opposed to that huge leap that we're trying to take. And so talking about steps and leaps, I know that you're no longer in the UK. So I want to talk a little bit about what was that step that you took to enable yourself to kind of fan your own flame, as it were.
yes. So I live in America now, and I moved out here very recently. It's 5 weeks ago. But this was a process that started in 2019 because I started my visa process to come here, and I had to go through so many mental barriers about cost, about money, coming from a background where, for example, phrases like "money doesn't grow on trees" and having this kind of limited beliefs about money. You know, we can talk about all that separate. That's fine. But then I had to go through all of that kind of stuff, and then I had to go, right, I want to spend some time in California, just to kind of check it out, see what it's like, and then obviously COVID hit, which delayed a lot of things. But then I came out. The whole 8 weeks has just been completely crazy because interviews in London, for my visa, my passport, all of this kind of stuff, and then I had to be on a plane within 2 weeks. So I had to book the plane, I had to do all these things, and yeah.
And so you were taking steps there to
Yes.
get to somewhere where you wanted to be.
Yes.
And I'm sensing that some of those steps are outside of your comfort zone. You know, where you
Oh
talk
yeah.
there about this idea of money. You know, it's like, well, you've got to have somewhere to live. You've got to pay for that. You've got to pay for your flights. So there's going to be a cost. But I'm curious about what was it that enabled you to go, even though there is some fear here, there is something else for me over there, not necessarily physically as in the States, but there's something for me in that other space that I need to make that step to that space.
You know, it was that above all of the fear, there was an innate belief about this is what I need to do, and this is what I can do. And sometimes throughout the whole visa process, there were setbacks. I had to get press. I had to get not just the money for the visa, but also what they call deal memos. I had to get 12 of those. I had to get kind of letters of recommendation and all of these kind of things from various people. So it's that kind of asking, but I turned it into a game. I thought to myself, okay, if I ask one person for a letter of recommendation, and then I can kind of make that into a game and make it playful rather than business, and it kind of steps into the playful part of me, making it into a game. This is all I'm doing. I'm just contacting this person, saying, "Hi, yeah, can you just write me a letter of recommendation to come and live in the US?" La la la. I know it's a bit crazy, and they need this specific language. Blah blah blah.
Yeah. So what's interesting there, because you talk about making it playful.
Yeah.
And there's something we do as humans, I guess, when we get into a playful mode where it's like, well, this is a game, so it doesn't matter the outcome. So then we kind of release ourselves from attachments or beliefs around it going wrong or it going badly.
Yes.
Because we go, I'm just going to play a game. I'm just going to play a game and see what happens. I'm just going to, play a game called building a business, or play a game called being an actor in the States and writing plays. I'm going to play a game of whatever. And it's a little bit like when I talk about experiments, like, let's do an experiment. And if it goes wrong, what can we learn from it? As opposed to, this is life, and if it goes wrong, it's all over. It's like,
Yeah.
how we get playful, experimental with it, and just kind of see where it takes us.
I think this is it. The word experiment is such a great word, because it's like, it's not saying there's a kind of end point. We're just having fun. We're just experimenting at stuff, and just seeing what comes out of it, just seeing the potential what comes out of it. And I think we can use that analogy in a lot of different areas of our lives, and thinking, okay, you know what, I'm just going to experiment doing this thing, and then that takes the pressure off. Because as you said, you know, I had to go through all these hoops, all this red tape, which is completely understandable, but then taking the pressure off, it having to look like this, so therefore it didn't have to be perfect. It could be messy, it could be a bit haphazard. And you know, me on a day-to-day basis, I am messy, I am haphazard, I am just a bit, yeah.
And you know, there's something interesting, you know, what you're saying there about taking the pressure off, and it reminds me of sports people when they talk about when they allow the pressure to get too much, they can't perform at that high level.
Yes.
So it's about having enough pressure, but not having an overwhelming amount of pressure that stops them from doing it. But you know, staying in that, this is just a game, this is playful, I'm enjoying this. What else might I be able to do in this game?
Yeah, and also like enjoyment and curiosity. So I approached each stage of coming here with this sense of curiosity, with a sense of what can I, you know, how can I be curious about this thing that's happening now, you know? So that's quite nice, and you know, it has this kind of wide-eyed type kind of visual about it. About being curious, about being, you know, about treating it like a game.
And so now I've got this image of your backing dancers, but they've got big eyes and they're looking out and they're kind of seeing what's going on and being playful with it. So there's a bit of a cheekiness in there as well.
I mean, that's me all over. Cheekiness, playful, backing dancers, rah rosca, high heels, a lot.
Love it. Love it. And I guess this, you know, when we get into a state of curiosity, you know, as coaches, we talk about, you know, being curious about what's happening, what can we notice, what can we pay attention to. But when we allow ourselves to be curious about ourselves and our lives, I think one of the things that happens is we begin to notice more because we're curious about what's happening. And so we just kind of pay attention to what's happening in the world just a little bit more.
Yeah, we are. It's like our blinders have come off. So instead of looking like this and, you know, onto the next thing, onto the next thing, onto the next thing, we start to kind of, as you said, we start to kind of have this kind of vision. And we may not necessarily interact with the stuff that goes on here, but we are conscious of it and aware of it. And then we get into the sense of, okay, so this is happening and this is happening over here. So I choose to interact with this or not.
But yeah, and then we start to see opportunities that we may not have seen before.
So, and this is really interesting. So I was talking about this the other night. My pad's over there, but I was coaching this the other night. And if we imagine a graph, a horizontal and vertical graph, and the bottom left corner, so the very bottom left corner is when we were born, and then throughout our lives, we just place little X's on the graph. These X's are moments of our life: the birth of our children, getting married, a heavy divorce, you know, a separation from our loved ones, all this kind of stuff that we apply meaning to. Some good, some bad, some in the middle. And then what we do, the next stage, because we are meaning-making machines, we plot a line through the X's like that. And we say to ourselves, this is the type of person I am because of this, which is fine, and it's understandable because we're humans. But what we tend to ignore then is all the other X's that have happened outside of this line that we have given ourselves.
Well, you know, it's this focus about what we create. You know, what are we focusing on? Are we focusing on the experiences that we've had in their wholeness? Are we focusing on our bad experiences?
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that we're so good at is looking at what's gone wrong.
Oh, 100%.
And look at the mistakes that we've made. And we're less good at going, well, what what else have I done? What experiences have I had? It's a little bit like when we go to write a CV and we start off, we've got a few things on it, and then somebody goes, yeah, but what about that? And what about this? And what about that? And
Yes.
what about
Yeah.
that? And it starts to build. And I guess in a way, when we talk about fanning the flame, there is a little bit of that going on where we're kind of paying attention to all of the experiences, not just a few that may have not been the best experiences, but we're going, what else is here that you can really lean into that can allow you to recognize the richness of what you've done and of what you bring to a situation?
Yeah, I love that. Because we often forget it, don't we? We often forget the good stuff that we've done because we are hardwired to remember the negative stuff, and we stay safe in this negativity because it benefits us in some way, whether it makes us feel safe or whether it makes us feel like, you know what, I am this type of person. So yeah, there is a benefit to thinking like that way.
Yeah, I mean, we keep ourselves safe because in our primeval, is that the right word I'm looking for? I don't even know.
It's a
But
good word.
in our minds, there's something about, if we're not safe, that the lions are going to get us, that the bear's going to drag us into the woods and devour us. And so we go, when things go wrong, we're like, oh, I don't want to do that. We'll stay away from that. And so we keep ourselves safe. But in doing that, we can also play small.
Yes, we can.
And whilst there are still lions and tigers and bears out there, it's like they're not in our everyday life necessarily. There's something about, we can step into a biggerness, a granderness.
Yeah. I think we see, and I was about to say, as soon as you said lions and tigers and bears, I was going to say, oh my. For those not knowing, that's a Wizard of Oz reference.
So now you've got me thinking about clicking my little red heels.
Because we both know you've got some, Rob. It's interesting, isn't it? What we do is, you're absolutely right. There is no physical lions and bears and tigers ready to eat us. But what we do is we replicate those with actual people, with actual situations.
Yeah.
For example, our boss that we might think is whatever, Yeah, for example, our mother-in-law, for example. I'm just saying. I'm not saying my mother. I'm just.
So I guess, because there are. I don't want anybody to think that we don't recognize that there are real dangers in the world. There are real dangers out there, but I guess I'm not talking about the real dangers. I'm talking about our perceived dangers.
Yes.
And the dangers that are caught up in our beliefs that hold us back, that stop us from really stepping into. And I guess that's the space where somebody will work with a coach or a therapist that can perhaps help you, or a mentor even, to help you begin to shift. Is this a real danger, or is this just a perception of danger?
And beliefs are everything, aren't they? I mean, we could have a whole day talking about beliefs. And as I said, like when I first started the application to come here, I had to have a lot of work thinking about money mindset, and of course, money is a very common belief where people can have limiting beliefs around money, especially if you've grown up in an environment where your primary caregivers also had their beliefs about money.
Yeah.
So it starts from that point. It starts from your beliefs, and it starts from this perception, as you said, that actually, oh, okay, is this a perception that I have of the situation, or is this actual reality?
And we could then have a day's discussion on what is reality, but we won't go there today.
No.
And then, I'm reading a book at the moment called The Soul of Money, and I've been having some discussions around this idea that, that money is an energy that gets passed around, and we can get to a point where we're trying to hold on to it, so the energy becomes stuck. Yes. So how can we feed that energy, and how can we explore what's happening with our energy in relationship to the energy of money? Yeah. So how can we feed that in a positive way, as opposed to, as you were saying, that negative, there isn't enough, so let me hold on to what I have. And that's not saying that there isn't any real challenges around. In the UK, all of the energy bills are going up, and no one is getting paid anymore, but the cost of living is going up. So there is a real tension around it. But just thinking, if you could think about it in a slightly different way, it kind of opens up this doorway of, okay, I'm not going to think of it from a scarcity perspective. I'm going to think of it from an abundance perspective, or
Yes.
there is enough. But how do I lean into that enough, and how do I experience that? And what might I do? What might I give myself permission or curiosity to do, to see how I might become part of that enough?
I love that. And there's so much to talk about here. But, just at the end there, you mentioned about giving yourself permission. And this is such a crucial thing about, okay, you know what? The permission slip that I'm writing myself is that my beliefs about money is the fact that there isn't enough to go around. And then it starts from that point, and about how can I reframe that? How can I reframe this situation? And you're right when you say about money is just energy. It's just energy. It's just exchanging energy. And coming from a scarcity perspective to an abundant perspective is so essential, because there is so much. For example, as we were talking about money, there is so much money out there, and it's just coming around all the time. It's just there in the universe, just waiting for you just to kind of reach out and grab it.
I'm as we're speaking about this, there'll be people listening or watching going, I don't have that money. I can't reach out. I can't grab it. That's not there
Right.
for me. And there are some very real
Yes.
situations where that is the case. And I also, so I accept that, but I also have this idea or this thought that with that belief also creates a scarcity. No, that's not about blame.
No, not at all.
It's just about what happens when we shift our thinking about something. Does it shift? And it may only shift a tiny amount.
Yeah.
But what happens when we begin to experiment with shifting our thinking?
So we are masters of our own universe. What we are doing on the inside creates what happens on the outside. So of course, yes. And again, there's no blame. I come from a similar background regarding money, for example, but about kind of shifting. Okay, what can I do? What 1% or 0.5% or 0.25% can I do in the situation I'm right now to perhaps improve it financially?
Yeah.
And sometimes it takes a small step, and sometimes it takes a bigger leap.
And what's you're talking about inside out. Then it makes me think about the inside out revolution, and it also makes me think about all of that stuff about how we are on the inside creates our outside or external experiences. It's not that something happens to us out there and we feel it. It's we create a feeling, and stuff happens out in the world. Now we could get all caught up in the energies or the beliefs and the ideas around that, and there's a bit of me that goes, it's good to get caught up in that, because there's a real thing about we are in control of how we feel, but we don't often recognize that or own that. When we start to go, right, I can choose how I want to feel about my life or about something. Okay, let me do that. Then we can notice that our lives start to shift and start to change. And perhaps we can talk about that as universal resonance, but we might also just talk about it as we start to see things in a different way and notice different opportunities.
Absolutely. One exercise that I used both for myself and my clients back then was writing everything down in terms of how much things cost. So having a notepad and just going around when I was in the supermarket, just writing it down and just seeing how that felt within me. So if I was buying Marmite, which I'm a big fan, for example, it would be, however much Marmite is, and then just kind of writing it down. And then the physical act of writing prices down and taking cash with us, taking cash to the supermarket and not paying on a card, not paying on a debit card or credit card or something, was really important, because then it gave me much more respect for cash. And going, okay, great, this is all I'm doing. I'm just exchanging energy in cash. With a card, it's so easy, because we buy coffees, we buy this, we buy that, and we lose track.
Yeah. And there's something there about the physicalness of things. I'm one of those people that has everything on their phone. So every now and again, I'll be somewhere and they say it's cash only, and I'm like, I don't have cash. And I go, well, there's a cash machine over there, and I go, I don't even have a card on me. Because I just like I've got my phone, and that's it. And there's something about that removes the physical exchange of things.
Yes, it does.
And when we, get into a physical relationship with things, that we can grapple with those things, we can feel and touch those things. And you saying writing down how much things cost reminds me of things like when we are going on a health kick and we write down what we eat.
Yes.
And we start to actually pay attention to, so what am I consuming here? And we start to build that physical relationship with it that allows us to create shifts and changes with it.
And it's that physical accountability, isn't it? It's that kind of, okay, you know what? This is how much my shopping was. This is how much this thing cost. And actually, just going back to our conversation earlier on, Rob, about making it into a game. Just making it into a game. Oh, yeah, so mine might cost this much this month, and then last month it cost this much. Oh, interesting. I mean, I'm just a geek about shopping, clearly. But
I can imagine that you're also going, right, in that shop it's this much, and in this shop it's this much.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the small little things, and it might not seem like a great big shift, but energetically it's huge, because then we start to kind of put it out there. Then we start to kind of move forward and put it out there. And we're not thinking about things in terms of scarcity and lack. Rather, we're becoming aware of costings and money and pricings, because when we don't see it, we tend not to pay attention to it.
And that sort of really makes me think about writing our goals down and sticking them up so we can see them.
Perfect.
Because then we pay attention to them. They're there. And I don't know if this was a podcast or a book where I heard it, but somebody, well, it might have been Elka Edwards, I'm not sure now, but somebody saying to me or reading out to me this idea of giving yourself permission to go wild in your desires. So sometimes when we go, oh, this is my goal, we write something that we think is achievable or attainable, as opposed to writing something that's big and outside of what we think is possible, and really going for that desire and go, this is what I really want, and writing that down and sticking that up and go, right, that's where I'm going. Now, I might not get there in this lifetime, but that's where I'm heading.
Yeah. And it's really interesting. And then stepping back from that place in the kind of, right, how do I get there? What's the next step I need to take to get to that point? What's the next step I need to take? And sometimes we might get halfway and go, you know what? I've done this much, and I feel like I'm okay, and then our goals change, and that's okay. So it's having that flexibility to kind of go, I don't really want to do this anymore. I want to do this thing.
And I think that there's flexibility and curiosity in that sense of going, this is where I'm going, but I'm open to other opportunities, and those opportunities may resonate with me more greatly. And I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't have gone for this. So it's about, beginning, starting, seeing what's happening, and then from that going, well, what else, and what else, and what else, and what else, whilst also taking time to come back and go, okay, so there's lots of what else is. Which one do I want to go for? Okay, let's take a focus step in that direction.
When you said that phrase, and what else, I just felt the hairs on the back of my neck. And it was just like, of course, it's so simple, but at the same time, it can be quite difficult as well, because often we don't see it, do we? We don't I'm like, yes, of course. And what else? What's next? Having that kind of being willing to kind of go, to be open.
Yeah. And I think there's in that willingness to ask what else, it's a kind of like, what else can I do? It's not just what else is available to me, but what else can I do to achieve this? And who else can I talk to? And who can they talk to? And what's next for me? And how do I create that next? How do I be a part of that creation and that growth? And then see where that takes me, and recognizing that things may stumble on that way, but what we might consider as failure is only learning.
Yes.
Although it doesn't always feel like that.
No, oh God, no. I mean, the thing is with growth isn't meant to feel comfortable. Of course, sometimes it does, which is wonderful, but I feel that's rare. Growth is sticky and challenging and anxiety provoking, and it can make us feel insecure. It's hard sometimes to grow because our inner child, or our safety is kind of like, what, I just want to stay where I am, and that's fine. I just want to stay here, like children do sometimes, and they put a blanket over their heads, and that's it. And they just,
And I think that's okay if we're aware of doing that, and we're making the choice to do that for now.
Yes.
So, there are days when I go, do you know what? I don't want to face the world. I just want to cover myself up and hide away. It feels too hard. It feels too tough. I feel like I don't have the energy, or whatever that might be. And going, right, I'm just going to do this. But recognizing that actually I'm doing this for now, and it's a conscious choice. Yes. And then tomorrow I'm going to make a different choice.
There's nothing wrong with watching 6 hours of Outlander in bed on Netflix. Nothing wrong. Oh, that's just me, isn't it? Yeah. But I think this is the thing, and being the CEO of our own lives, it's like there's a part of us that's kind of advisory and kind of going, okay, great. So we can plow on, or we can just take a step back and kind of going, this is what I want to do today. So let's just close the company down for the day. Let's just do this thing and not face the world. Let's walk in nature, or whatever it is that we choose to do.
And I think this really resonates with me, in this idea that we can keep plowing on, but at some point we hit a wall unless we take time out to go, what is it that I need to do to fuel my system to keep moving forward? What's my pit stop? Where am I refueling? Where do I go for my rejuvenation time? And I think sometimes we don't do that because we think we should just keep going because the world tells us, keep going. Sometimes we don't take time out because we feel guilty about that.
Hello, ring that bell. Yeah.
And sometimes we think, if we take time out, we have failed. If I have to admit that I need to stop, then I failed in some way, because there's some unwritten law that we're all abiding to that says you have to keep going, you have to hit that wall, and then you have to keep pushing beyond that wall, and that's the only way to achieve.
This is such an interesting point, Rob. I'm so pleased you brought it up, because it's a sign of the society that we are in. We are human beings, not human doings. And I have reframed the way I say, like I say, how are you doing? I'm like, how are you being? How are you being today? And actually it's a really interesting shift, because we are taught to kind of do this, you do this, you do this, you do this, do this, and then you die. And actually, no, life, it's so much more enjoyable just to be within that.
And you said, we do this, and we die, and it's like, well, if we fill our lives up of doing things but never enjoying things, never enjoying those experiences, never creating those experiences and those memories and those adventures, then it's like, well, what are we doing here?
I mean, this is, sorry to interrupt you. It's we do need that. We do need the doing. We do need the masculine. We do need that, obviously, because otherwise nothing would get done. But at the same time, we also need to be more. And especially, for myself, COVID gave me the permission to think of my life in a different way. And actually, people are stepping away from the 9 to 5. People are stepping away from, I need to, I've got this job that I don't like, and people are kind of stepping away and recreating their own lives.
Mm. And I think it's been a rebalancing.
Mm.
It's kind of enabled us to go, wait a minute, I thought this was how things balance, but it created a shift in that, and it's also caused us to slow down and to look at ourselves. For some of us, it created an increase in work. I know for me, when we went into that very first lockdown back in, what was that, March, I think?
March, yeah, 2020.
Actually, my world got faster, and that was because nobody was coming to meet me and us going to a coffee. They were on lines. They appeared. We did the thing, and the next person, and the next person, and all of a sudden, everything was just racing ahead. And there came a point where it's like, well, no, actually, how do we slow down to take charge of this, to manage the pace of this? And I think it's created a real rebalancing of people's systems. And for some people, they're going, actually, I want to go into the office and I want to do a 9 to 5
Of
because
course.
I meet people, I socialize, but also at the end of the day, I can close my computer and come home and not have to think about that.
Yes.
Others are like, I love working from home. I can work in my pajamas. I can just get up, turn on my laptop, and I can get going, or I can work at 2 o'clock in the morning, whatever feels right. And it feels like we're getting into this more hybrid, balanced space of how do we want to choose to engage with work.
Yes.
And I recognize that's not possible for everybody, but I think we're all asking, there's a beautiful generalization for you. I think a lot of us are asking that question about, how can we live a more balanced life? How can we live a more meaningful life when we recognize that things can shift and turn so quickly? So the time that we have, how do we appreciate it? How do we enjoy it? How do we find fulfillment in it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. How do we find fulfillment in it? How do we enjoy it more? And how can I live a more fulfilling life? I mean, these are all great questions, all big questions.
Mm.
And you mentioned just before that, Rob, you mentioned about refueling, rest and refueling, because we are encouraged just to kind of carry on, but actually we can't carry on if we are running on empty,
Yeah.
and we can't help another person if our cup is empty.
Yeah,
So
totally.
we have to kind of rest, refuel, give ourselves what we need, and
Yeah.
then we can give someone else.
Because we get we get so caught up in doing that we don't even notice that the cup's empty and we've
Yeah,
been running on fumes for
yeah,
however long, and then all of a sudden we grind to a halt. All our bodies go, okay, you need to stop, so I'm going
yeah,
to stop you. I'm
yes,
going to create an illness to pause you in this world because you're not paying attention to the self.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. Well, that's why the body is so innately intelligent. It just gives you what you need. It shows you what you need. Just just
Mm.
listen.
So that's just made me really think about, how do we pay attention to our bodies? How do we pay attention to the callings? I remember a lady called Ishik. I can't remember her saying that surname, so apologies, Ishik, for not remembering your surname.
Ishik
Uh,
Tabar, I think.
yes,
Tabar,
that's the one,
yes.
where she talked about um, being quiet to hear the whispers, the internal
Mm,
whispers. And there's
yeah.
something about how do we be quiet? How do we be still to notice where our bodies are calling to go to? What are the whispers that are reaching out to us?
Yeah. Oh, I like that. I might have to steal that. What are the
Yeah,
whispers? Yeah.
yeah. And it sort of makes me think about, when I think about our flames that we have, where do we move that flame and notice that it's just kind of burning a little bit brighter? And so we can move into that direction a little bit more. Where can we notice that somebody's trying to put out our flame in that space? So actually, let's take ourselves over here. And what
Mm.
are the things that bring lightness or aliveness to our flames? And how do we lean into those a little bit more?
That's a wonderful invitation for self-love, isn't it? It's a wonderful kind of, you know what, how can I protect my own flame?
Mm,
If it's under attack, someone wants to smother it or something, it's like, okay, I need to do this. Yeah, that's a
yeah.
wonderful invitation.
And also, I think it's an invitation to give love, because like, who around you needs their flame reignited? So how can you take your flame and offer it to them to re-spark their own flame?
Yes. Yes.
Oh.
I wrote these. This is all juicy stuff, Rob. I wrote just before we came on live here. I wrote this four-word phrase: "Be curious, but go gently." Five-word phrase: "Be curious, but go gently." And this is such a good thing. I'm like, and it's like we need to be curious, but we don't have to be like a bull in a china shop. We can go gently as we need to go.
Yeah, and I really like that addition there. Go gently as we need to go, because sometimes we need to go with pace and energy and attack, and other times we need to, you know, softly moving through the jungle that is life. Yeah.
Wow, I've loved this conversation, Rob. Thank you.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for joining me. So before we go, Danny,
Yes.
where can people get hold of you if they want to see what you're doing, if they want to connect with you? What's the best way for them to do that?
Big fan of Instagram. So my Instagram is at Danny Steele actor. Danny Steele, Steele actor. But I'm a coach, an actor, and writer and producer. I do all the things all of the times.
Awesome. Brilliant. So thank you so much for being on this Fan the Flames live, Danny. Really appreciate it. It's been a great conversation. And, you know, if you've listened to this and it's given you some ideas or some thoughts, then put those in the comments, reach out, connect. Let's have more conversations. And Danny, I look forward to our next conversation.
Thanks, Robert. Take care.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.